Hi, I'm Alan Smith and welcome to the show. You know, trees and shrubs play an important role in the design of a garden. They really are the framework or bones of a garden. So I love them for that very reason. And of course, there are other reasons to love them. There's so many unique things in the world of trees and shrubs. Take for instance this rose. This is Lady Banks. She's not that fragrant, but she really does bloom beautifully. Now she doesn't like cold temperatures, so this is not one that our friends in the north can grow, but in the south you may be familiar with her. And what I love about her is that she'll cover an area quite quickly. So why don't we get started with a few tips on pruning roses. I always enjoy hearing your questions on Facebook, and recently we've been talking about roses. And as you know, I love roses, and many of you do as well. One of the questions that we received this past week was, when do you prune your roses, Alan? Well, we try to prune our roses in late winter. One of the things that's really important these days, if you had any problems with rose rosette, the idea to clip the tips of roses and make sure those get taken out of the garden and disposed of is one of the best ways to deal with rose rosette. A lot of people ask, well, you know, how do you know what to cut out? Well, I always start with the 3 Ds. If it's dead, if it's damaged or diseased, it needs to come out. And so you just take a nice sharp pair of bypass pruners like this and clip them out. So with this rose, I'm really just going to take off the tips to make sure that we remove any of those potential mites. And then I'm going to take out some of the dead here around the base and open up the rose a little bit because I want it to grow out. And the way I do that is I just prune on an outwardly facing bud. So if you see here, this is an outwardly facing bud. If I prune just above that, that means this limb is going to grow out this way. And so I want my roses to grow out, and I want the center of it to get light and air circulation, because this helps to cut down on diseases such as powdery mildew and black spot, which can be troublesome for roses. All right, now that's a shrub rose. Let's go take a look at a climbing rose. Okay, so now take a look at this one. This is, I'm growing a shrub rose as a climber, but what I'm going to say about this particular shrub rose, like Calatrava, would apply to climbers. What I've tried to do, as you can see, this thing is over 8 feet tall and it just keeps growing. So I think a lot of the same principles apply to it. Has beautiful white flowers on it. If you don't grow this rose, you should. It's very disease resistant. And I like it growing it vertically like this because it adds so much to the garden. And what I'm doing here is I'm just going to go through and I'm going to try to clean out a lot of this dead foliage. As you can see, the red buds are beginning to form, and each one of those will be the new stems. And on those new stems will be those gorgeous white flowers, which is what growing roses is all about. So the idea here is just to kind of go through and thin this and clean it out. There's a good bit of dead in here. I didn't actually get to these last year like I should have. And I want to kind of open up the center a little bit, and I want to continue to grow them right up to the top. And then I'm also going to try to take some of these canes and weave them kind of into the metal structure, this tutor that I designed. And just by gently pulling them around, and see this cane, for instance, can be pulled back around here on this side. You can begin to direct the plant in the way you want it to grow. So you've got it set and sited just the way you like for the growing season. What multi-use evergreen can be used to make tea? Stay tuned and find out. Everyone's into native plants these days, and why? Well, it makes a lot of sense. They're native, they're used to the conditions in which they grow. So that makes them disease resistant, often drought resistant, and really tough and hardy plants. And many of them are very beautiful. I happen to think this plant is very beautiful. It's a Yaupon holly. What I like about it is it's a native, but I can clip it into a hedge. You can go as formal as you like with this. You can clip them like those fancy topiary that are often done in yew or boxwood. Yaupon holly is very drought resistant, but it can also grow in boggy areas. It's a great source of food for birds. The female Yaupons can be covered with these little red berries. You can see there's just a few left from the winter. Now you may be wondering where Yaupon grows in the United States. It grows from coastal North Carolina all the way to East Texas, and from the very tip of Florida all the way up to really southern Missouri, northern Arkansas. So there's quite a wide range. If you look closely at a leaf, it's a beautiful green, oval shaped and very glossy. But what's behind that green is a real powerhouse. This is the most caffeinated plant in North America. Yes, you can actually make caffeinated tea from Yaupon holly leaves, and it's really quite delicious. Now, I don't want you to think that Yaupons look like this in nature, a clipped hedge. They're a beautiful small tree or large shrub. They can have a compelling naturalistic look to them. So they're really a tree that can work in lots of different types of landscapes. And like I said, they're edible. Up next, a recipe with figs that you don't want to miss. It's always a joy to walk around the garden this time of year and see what's emerging. And I'm particularly excited about what's going on here with Miss Big Fig. Look at those little fig leaves already coming out. Now, Miss Big Fig came through 6 degrees. That was pretty cold this winter, so I'm happy to see this new foliage. Now, if you love the flavor of figs as much as I do, you're going to love this recipe from my friend Regina Charbonneau.
This is one of my favorite go-to recipes. It's a fig and walnut torta. I love it because it can be made ahead and put in the freezer. So it's very simple, not even that many ingredients. I always soften my butter and my cream cheese. I let them get to room temperature so they're easier to whip. So I have 1 stick of butter. I cut into thirds. And it's nice and soft, so I know it's going to be easy to whip. And then I have the cream cheese. So I'm gonna do for this one 2 8-ounce blocks of cream cheese. And you can buy a 4-ounce, but I'm just gonna cut this one in half. So it's basically 20 ounces of cream cheese. And I add a 1/4 cup of sour cream. And then I'm just gonna use a hand mixer. push it down a little bit. Now that I have it whipped, it's the perfect consistency, and I take about half of it and I put it in I spray my springform pan with oil, and then just take this, and I do a turning motion to get it smooth. It's one of those things you can't go wrong any way you do it. You want to make sure you have it smooth so there are no air bubbles in it. And then I take my fig jam, put it in the center, and then I just kind of tilt it a little bit, and then top it. And it's okay if you get a little fig jam mixed in on the top, because you're going to actually turn this upside down so it won't show. And then I'm going to wrap this with plastic wrap and put it in the freezer. Okay. So what I love about this is when you go to unmold it, it holds its shape. If you've ever tried to unmold soft cream cheese that's not frozen, you'll get your fingers all in it and you'll have dents, but this way you get a nice product. And I just take a little knife to take this off, and you have a pretty presentation. The other thing that's great about this dish is you can use any filling you want. You can do hot pepper jelly or pesto, but it's a very versatile appetizer. If I'm having a dinner party, I'll take it out the night before or earlier in the day and let it just thaw in the refrigerator. And when you're ready to serve it, you just put walnuts on top and serve it with crackers.
This tree has been to the moon and back. When we return, let's see how it's lived long and prospered. We've all heard that saying, to the moon and back. Well, that's actually the case with this loblolly pine tree here. It boldly went where no tree has gone before. This loblolly pine is actually called a moon tree. You see, its seed was taken to the moon on the Apollo 14 flight in 1971. Stuart Roosa, a former U.S. Forest Service smoke jumper, carried the seeds on the lunar voyage. He carried hundreds of tree seeds of 5 species. When Stuart returned, the seeds germinated, producing about 450 seedlings. Congressional leaders and state forestry services planted them across the country. So let's get around to this particular tree. It was planted on Arbor Day in 1976 to celebrate our nation's bicentennial. And here's where it grows today.
I actually started in the county judge's office in 1976. So when this was planted, I was an employee here. There was quite a bit of excitement about it. I've seen it grow over the years. We've tried to take care of it, trim it and prune it and keep it, make it a priority to give it plenty of space.
This moon tree is one of about 100 still remaining, but the second generation exists from seedlings and cuttings made from those originally that went to the moon. Kind of one of those out of this world stories, don't you think? Okay, mission moon tree complete. Beam me up. You don't want to miss these super-sized natural wonders of Dardanelle, Arkansas up next. This grand old lady is the big sister oak here at Moss Mountain Farm. She's actually a post oak, or Quercus stellata, a native tree. And she's the center point. I call her the North Star of the farm. In Dardanelle, Arkansas, you can see several specimens of world record-making trees. So let's take a look.
Dardanelle is all about trees.
We have at least 6 trees in Dardanelle that are now state records.
I think what makes Front Street and Dardanelle quite unique is the fact that they have about 5 champion trees right along this particular street, and I don't know of any other city in Arkansas that has that.
We have the Millennium Tree, which is at Council Oaks. It is the oldest tree in Dardanelle, and they estimate that between 400 and 450 years old.
It's a white oak species of oak tree. It got its name because the Cherokee Indians and the white man signed a treaty here underneath these trees. We got a bunch of guys together, and I believe it took 7 of us to reach around this tree. That's a pretty darn good sized tree to have in your backyard.
These trees are considered champions because of the size of them, how big they are, and the way we determine that is we basically take 3 measurements. The circumference and the height and the crown spread are put together in a formula, and that gives us what we call a bigness index. And that particular number is what determines if the tree is going to be a champion or not.
The common persimmon tree is designated as one of the national records by Arbor Day. And when they found the tree to do the measurements to begin with, it had a basketball goal nailed to it, and the kids were playing basketball. And after we found out about that, then we got busy and started working on trying to get proper recognitions for the trees. And by doing so, one of the things we're required to do is to get some city ordinance made to protect those particular trees so they can't do things like that.
These trees have obviously been around a long, long time to be as big as they are, and I think that we should try to take care of these trees and watch over them. We've given them a lot of abuse, but most of them have thrived and come on in spite of all the obstacles that they have to overcome in order to live in an environment that's not really that great for them.
If you care anything about your history, you look at that, and it makes a significance just knowing that they were there when your ancestors came through here.
If anyone thinks that they may have a champion tree or a tree they would like to get measured, they can contact their local state forestry people, and most of them will be glad to come out and to take the measurements and see what they've got.
Want to learn more? Visit pallensmith.com for delicious recipes, garden tips, blog posts, and our online store. Trees are such marvelous things. Each one of them has special characteristics, like this magnolia. This variety is called Bracken's Brown Beauty. The underside of the leaf has a beautiful velvet-like texture, and of course the color's brown. Well, I hope you've been inspired to look at trees in a slightly different way. They bring so much beauty, joy, and, well, essential things like oxygen and food to us. So the more trees, the better. Until next time, I'm Alan Smith.